So I'm very, very excited for this next hour. And to kick it off, I've got a very wonderful guest with me, Lila Ibrahim, the Chief Operating Officer at Google DeepMind. Lila, great to have you here, and thanks for joining. So I wanted to start off by talking about DeepMind and the technology you're working on at the moment. There's so much going on at the company. You've got the Gemini model, your AlphaFold product. There's so much going on. So talk to me about what are the key priorities for this year at DeepMind in terms of a tech perspective.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, and welcome everyone. We've had, for those of you who aren't familiar, Google DeepMind, where our focus really is on how do we build AI responsibly to benefit humanity. And we do that through two main routes. One is we work on the AI research to advance scientific discovery and breakthroughs. And the other is through our collaboration with Google colleagues on Google products. On the first part, maybe what I'm really excited about is a lot of the work that we're doing to advance the work of AI and unlocking our understanding of science and how the world works. Last year, we had some significant breakthroughs with material science, weather forecasting, math and computer science discovery, and that all builds on top of continued advancements in AlphaFold. I'm happy to talk about that in more detail. And what we're seeing basically is we're seeing that AI is enabling science at digital speed. To cap off the year, last year, we saw the launch of Gemini, our most capable, our most general model. And it was actually built multimodal from the ground up. And that means it can take all sorts of information, whether it's text, whether it's audio, video, images, even code. And so having that all built in from the beginning, and then it also went through the most comprehensive safety and evaluation testing, including bias and toxicity. We launched that at the end of this year, last year. So this year, what I'm most excited about is how are the scientists going to leverage the discoveries that were made last year and really build out areas of food security and understanding of diseases, how to make more effective vaccinations, how to enable new materials that, for example, batteries that can better batteries that can power electric vehicles, or superconductors to power supercomputers. And on generative AI, what's everyone going to do to build off these new capabilities? And I think that's what I'm really excited about.
So that was a big question of mine, is we're talking a lot about LLMs, about generative AI, but what are sort of what's the next frontier? What comes next after that?
Well, I think last year, a lot of people understood that the current generation of large models still had a lot of challenges. We had issues of hallucination. We had challenges in furthering the issues and gaps in representation, bias, concerns around misuse, et cetera. So there are a lot of areas in how do we manage the risks while also advancing how we can use AI for opportunities. Maybe what I can share with you as well is there's some technical aspects that we're working on. For example, how do you build in memory and planning so that we can actually, how do we improve the groundedness and the factuality so we can actually use the AI as more integrated in our everyday lives and more of a trusted assistant.
What about at Davos, there's a lot of debate around AI at the moment in terms of some of the risks, in terms of what unintended consequences there might be at this point in time. I just want to sort of get your take on one of the big debates that's been playing out, over, I guess, the last few years, and that is around whether AI is an existential threat to humanity or not. There are some who believe that it is. There are others who say, well, this is just overblown and it's not going to be as exciting as you think it's going to be. What's your take on that?
There is a debate externally on AI risks, whether it's so the way I think about it is like almost a spectrum. You have the near-term risks such as bias, misinformation, you have misuse, and then the long-term risks such as the existential risk of who's controlling this and whose values are built into this and into the machinery. And so instead of it being an either or, I like to think about it as more of a continuum.
Right.
From my perspective, as someone who's only come into this field maybe 6 years ago, building on my 30 years at the intersection of technology and social impact, I'm like, this isn't an either or. So how do we think about having the conversations of what are we doing to build this to be more robust, and how are we having conversations? We can't predict if the long-term risk, the safety risks are going to happen or not, but rather than wait and find out, aren't we responsible to ourselves, to humanity, to the future generations, if we're actually having those conversations now? Like, that's what I feel, and so it's why we've leaned into a lot of that work. I've been really pleased last year of the conversations we've been having with governments and civil society. So we've spent a lot of time working with governments in the UK, in the US, and EU and worldwide on what does it mean to be responsible shepherds of this technology. We saw a lot of progress. The White House commitments, we saw the Safety Summit, which led to the safety institutes that have been established, commitments to share models to the governments to do evaluations on them. We have work in the G7. We also held a number of conversations with civil society, whether it was people with disabilities, artists, educators, really to talk about what is this technology going to enable? What are the risks that they see AI will bring into their community? And how can we actually not wait for that to happen, but rather take that back and put it into how we're developing AI so we can be better and more responsible developers of the technology?
What are some of the things you're doing to mitigate some of these risks around things like bias, around misinformation, and ensuring that the development of AI doesn't create inequality, like organizations such as the IMF have warned about, so that it's an inclusive technology?
Yeah, well, I believe that AI is such a transformational technology, and that requires exceptional care, and it can't be just a bolt-on. We have to be building this in from the start. It's part of the reason that we take such a collaborative approach, and to understand how is this going to intersect with various communities and get their voices into the early development. If I could give you an example, I mentioned AlphaFold earlier. AlphaFold is a predictive model of how a protein will fold. And if you can understand how a protein can fold, you can also understand how it misfolds. These are the basic building blocks of life and can help us really advance, whether it's the life sciences, understanding of diseases, whether it's fighting plastic pollutions, or as I mentioned, food security. But what we wanted to do is, we wanted to understand, is this something we should release? Yeah. So we sought inputs from over 36 experts in this field, bioethicists, Nobel Prize winners, academics, and they actually encouraged us to release the database openly and work with organizations such as the Neglected Disease Institute to ensure that we were taking an equitable approach and being responsible in how we were deploying the technology. So what we did is, based on their guidance and pulling them in early. So we think about it, maybe if I take a step back, in terms of responsible governance, do we have the right culture in the organization? Do we have the right voices around the table? And when we don't, how do we pull those voices in? Do we have responsible research, not just the technical research, but the socio-technical research? Yeah. We've done work in the area of decolonial AI, we've done some work in queer fairness. We've done work in how do you even talk about the risks, like what's the taxonomy around large language models? Yeah. And then the responsible deployment, as I just mentioned.
When I was talking earlier about some of those debates around the existential threat
yes.
around AI, a lot of that often is in regards to this idea of artificial general intelligence, or AGI. And Sam Altman, I think this week, says he believes that AGI will be here in a reasonably close-ish future. What's your view on AGI and actually how close we are to that?
I think that's actually, a lot of people have been asking that question this week, and the reality is no one knows. There's a debate within the AI experts who've been doing this for a long time, both within the industry and also within the organization. We're already seeing areas where AI has the ability to unlock our understanding. I just mentioned a few examples of that, where humans haven't been able to make that type of progress. So it's AI in partnership with the human, or as a tool. So I think that's really a big open question, and I don't have a better answer other than like, how do we actually think about, rather than how much longer will it be, how do we think about what it might look like, and how do we ensure we're being responsible stewards of the technology?
One of the other concerns I've heard this week as well is around the companies developing AI at the moment, and the concern that the development of AI may cement the power of the large tech companies, mainly US tech companies. They're the ones with the resources to train these huge models and spend millions of dollars doing so as well. Now, of course, Google DeepMind is part of Google. How do you respond to some of those concerns that have been raised around that?
Oh, well, if we think of, there's a few things. So first of all, the work that we've done around AlphaFold, or even our material science discovery genome, we've released that to the scientific community. And in many ways, it's actually advanced the opportunities for those scientists. They no longer need expensive equipment. To give you an example, to understand one single protein used to take 4 to 5 years, and access to the right equipment. We made all of that, discovered all of them, predicted all of them, put them in a database that we opened to scientists. On material science discovery, that's another one. We think that we've saved over 1 billion years between, with AlphaFold, and not quite that much with on our materials discovery, but going from 48,000 known stable crystals and materials to over 2 million, and publishing a database of the 350,000 plus materials that can be now validated. So in many ways, we feel for science, this is actually going to open up a lot of opportunity to really advance the impact that we can have for humanity, and build a better future. On generative models, we're working with cloud to make our models more accessible, and we're also trying to do that in a responsible way by building in technology like SynthID, which is a watermarking technology, so that other developers can build on top of these tools. And I think this year we're going to see a lot more opportunities.
What's the role of regulation in all of this? When we talk about the responsible development, does regulation have a role to play? And if so, what kind of role should it play? This is such a powerful technology that we need to be having conversations, and it's not one government. AI is not going to be limited to a specific national border, so we have to think about international coordination from the start. I've been very pleased with the fact that governments last year were really willing to engage and leaning into the conversation, which I think we've seen a shift of having the conversation last year. I think as we move forward, it's now how do we actually coordinate. Regulation is important, but I think it's also important to right-size the regulation so that we don't stifle the innovation. So we've been looking at more of a context-driven approach. It's not necessarily adding new regulation just for AI, but let's think about the context in which AI is being used. Lila, we've got about a minute left, so just give me your view on what you're excited about for 2024 in your field.
One of the things we didn't touch on is a little bit more personal. I'm particularly excited about what AI can mean for education and learning. So just as context, I spent some time throughout my career, as I mentioned, at the intersection of technology and social impact, and a large part of that is around education, especially as a daughter of immigrants and the opportunities that I had. And when I look to my daughters, I have twin daughters, and they have very different learning styles, and so I have my own A/B test going between them, and one of them happens to be dyslexic, and in a traditional education system, she wouldn't have access to some of the tools that I think AI could provide. And it doesn't replace what's in the classroom, I think the classroom and the teacher's role is still so important, but how can we ensure that students are getting more personalized learning and tutor help, and that the teachers are getting the kind of TA support that they need to better run the classrooms? I think this is, we're just at the early stages of all of this, but it's really exciting to think about what this could mean for everyone. And it's not just students in schools. I think we've all been on the learning journey in our careers, and here's a chance for us to really learn what we need to learn in a way that we need to learn it, especially with the multimodal capabilities that have now been built in.
Lila, thank you so much. That was wonderful insight. And it's great to hear about your views on where you think this technology is going in the future, and of course, how we need to develop this responsibly. Lila Ibrahim, the Chief Operating Officer of Google DeepMind. Thank you so much.
Thank you.